If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show on Red Apple Audio Network. Thank you so much for joining. We have people all over the country joining, affiliates all the way from Los Angeles to Maine, all the way down to Georgia. We pick up stations every week, thanks to you and making this broadcast and this show a success. We've been doing this now for about 5 years. And if you're new to the show, we talk about politics, we talk about economics, we talk about finance. We're live, we're in color, and we do take your calls because we love to hear from you. I say this every week, and I say it sincerely, that you're the people who make this show possible and popular because you listen in. And I know that you have a lot you can do on the weekends, but thank you for making the More Money Show part of your weekend. After the show is over, then you can get out and enjoy the fresh air and the kind of crisp, cool weather. I love it after the hot summer that we've had. October is one of my favorite months of the year with the beautiful, beautiful fall foliage. If you live in the Northeast, as many of you do, boy, now is the time to get out and see the beautiful colors out there. Excuse me. So it's going to be an action-packed show. We're going to start. We got Arthur Laffer. We have E.J. Antoni. We have a number of really great guests. But I want to talk, if I may, about what is going on quickly with the economy right now. The big issue is what is going on with this government shutdown. And I've got to tell you, I am angry about this because this is a great country. We have a great booming economy. The last thing we need right now is a government shutdown. There's no reason for it. The Republicans passed a budget that cuts $1.5 trillion out of $80 trillion in future spending. So if you do the math there, folks, it's not complicated. That's a 2%, roughly a 2% cut in spending over the next 10 years. 2%? That's nothing. That's nothing. I mean, families in America lost 5 to 10% of their income under Biden because of inflation. So we, by the way, we're not really cutting spending. In other words, it's not that the government spending is going to go down in any year. It's just not going to go up as fast as Chucky Schumer and his Democratic friends want it to go up. And by the way, the Republicans want the government to grow too. I'm not taking sides here in this, except for the fact that only 3 Democrats voted in the Senate against shutting down the government. It takes 60 votes to open up the government, and the Democrats will not open up the government. And what makes me especially angry about this, because listen, I'm in Washington, D.C. Our parks are closed. The Washington Monument is closed. If you travel a lot, as I do, I travel all over this great country. A lot of the flights are being either canceled or delayed because of the shutdown. So it is causing a lot of nuisance to Americans because they can't come together and get this budget. Now, these are serious issues, by the way. These are very serious issues for the finances of our country. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars. But I don't understand why we have to shut down the government for this. Now, there was an amendment this week that basically the Republicans brought that said, okay, we're fighting over how we're going to spend money on healthcare and these other things, but let's at least fund our military. Let's at least ensure that our national security is safe and secure, and that our soldiers get the pay raises that they've been promised because they are our heroes. And Democrats said, no. If you don't give us our way, we're going to shut down the military too. We're not going to reopen the military. We're going to put our national security at risk so that we can provide illegal immigrants with free health care. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much of one. The Democrats want to make sure that even people who are not working and could be working and should be working, get free health care. And they want illegal immigrants to get free health care. Now, I'm pro-immigration, but I don't want illegal immigrants getting free health care. I mean, my God, are we going to provide – there's 6 billion people on this planet, folks, and we can provide every one of the 6 billion people free health care. I saw AOC the other day, Alexandria Cortez, she was on CNN. She said, I believe it's a human right that everybody have health care. Does that mean everyone has a human right to come to America illegally and then sign up for free health care and free food and free shelter and free this and that? Sorry, folks, that's going to bankrupt our country. That ain't going to work. And so shame on the Democrats. Shame on Chucky Schumer for saying, we're not even going to open up our military and make sure that it's functioning because we're trying to score political points. I'm sorry. I find that to be despicable. And, it is putting our country in great danger. A couple other quick points I want to make before we get to our first guest, E.J. Antoni. I want to talk with him a little about gold because gold prices have been soaring. Have you seen that? They're out now up to $4,250 the last time I checked. I'm going to check in a minute to see what the exact price is at the moment. But that's been a huge increase, and the gold price has doubled since COVID. And so in 5 or 6 years, we've seen a doubling of the gold price. Why is that happening? I want to ask EJ about that. I think one of it is just people are fearful about what's going on with the out of control government spending in Washington. And that's another reason we have to bring the spending down. And by the way, inflation is still a bit of a problem, and Trump has brought it down, but we're still seeing prices rising at 3 to 4%. Coffee prices are up 50%. So people are struggling out there. And now is not the time to be playing political games, but doing things that help American families. That is not happening. And part of the problem is this government shutdown just creates a sense of disarray and turmoil. And it's almost as if the Democrats want the turmoil. They want the country not to succeed because they hate Trump. And I find that to be irresponsible. I love what Trump is doing on tax cuts. Fantastic. I love what he's doing on deregulation. Fantastic. We're saving about $1 trillion a year. I love what he's doing. Have you seen what's happening with gas prices, folks? I talked about inflation. One thing where we don't see inflation right now is with energy costs. No way. In fact, this week, we're probably going to see in many areas of the country gas below $3 a gallon. In fact, I think that AAA says right now we're right at $3 a gallon. Remember, it was $5 a gallon under Biden. So that's an improvement. And why is that happening? Because we do drill, baby, drill. So all of these things are very positive trends for the economy. I'm bullish. I know a lot of people are feeling dour and they're nervous. I am bullish, and I'm going to explain throughout the next hour or two of this show why it is that you should feel good about the American economy, because I do. I feel like Trump is righting the ship, and boy, it's about time. So we will be right back. Appreciate so much you all tuning in to the More Money Show every Saturday. You know, we're on from 1 to 3, and I know many of you listen to it on delayed broadcast. Thank you very much because you make the show a success. And when we come back, we'll be talking about with E.J. Antoni, one of the top economists in the country, about what is going on with the shutdown, what's going on with gold and stocks and all of these things, because it's a super important story. We'll be right back. This is the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend in October. October is one of my favorite months. As I was saying earlier, I just love the beautiful blue skies and the fall foliage and the crisp air, which is a nice reprieve after the hot summer we've had. So my next guest is the great E.J. Antoni, who is an economist at the Heritage Foundation. He also works with me at Unleash Prosperity. By the way, I hope everyone listening to this show is getting our Unleash Prosperity hotline. If you're not getting it, why aren't you getting it? It's free. It costs you nothing. All you have to do is go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up. Just click the button for hotline. We'll send it to you free every morning. And if you get it and you read it, and you can read it in about 5 or 6 minutes every morning, you will be the smartest person in the room because you will be chock full of useful economic information. So EJ, first of all, thanks so much for joining.
Oh, Steve, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
You too. So EJ was nominated by Donald Trump, and of course, this was a great privilege for you, EJ, to be nominated to be on to run the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That didn't turn out because it turned into a political war. So you're back in the private sector again. But one of the things you were showing me before this hullabaloo all started was that there was a vast overstatement under Biden of, I think, 2.5 or 3 million jobs, where the Bureau of Labor Statistics originally said that X number of jobs had been created, and it turned out to be a lot less than that. What happened?
Well, Steve, that's exactly right. You had this massive, and it was consistent. You consistently had these massive overstatements in those job estimates under Biden. So it's not.
And hold on. Let me just emphasize this point because it's so important, EJ. If you see, there's always going to be errors in predictions, right? I mean, because you're talking about the numbers and you're making estimates, but you would expect that those errors would be random. In other words, sometimes they would be too high, sometimes they would be too low. But in this case, they were almost always too high.
Right, exactly. We should anticipate what's sometimes called a random walk, and it's exactly what you just articulated, Steve. You'll have one month that's too high, another month that's too low, and it averages out to roughly zero. But the other thing is the revisions typically aren't that big. And what we saw under Biden was not only that they were big, but you're right, they were consistently in the same direction, which means there's something wrong with your initial prediction. You're consistently getting it wrong in the same way. So you should be adjusting your methodology. Yes. You should be adjusting how you collect data and process it, et cetera. And the fact that the BLS didn't do that after years of it being a problem, that's, I think, the real scandal here. It's the fact that they were incompetent, but knew they were incompetent and did nothing to fix it.
Now, when I was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we talked about this, and we had our little impromptu press conference, many of you may have seen that. I mentioned these numbers that you had provided me with, that this huge overestimate of jobs under Biden. And of course, Trump said that the numbers were rigged, and that caused him a little bit of a political hailstorm. But the fact is, that there were, gigantic wrong estimates. And so either there was some kind of political manipulation or they were just incompetent. But in either case, the BLS had to go. So here we are now, EJ, in the middle of October. So we've had about 9 months of the Trump presidency, and things seem to be going well with GDP, with the output of the country is growing. Inflation, I'd like to see it a little lower, but it's still come down a lot from when Biden was president. How do you assess the current economic situation? But polling is showing that people are nervous about the economy. Should they be?
Steve, it's a great question. I think the answer might depend on who it is who's asking the question. In other words, if you're a federal bureaucrat, you have reason to be concerned,
right?
Because you may finally be held accountable, and you may have to go get a job.
And by the way, Trump has already reduced the federal workforce by about 300,000 people, and that's about time, because that's called draining the swamp, right?
Right, exactly, Steve. What a great point. And what we've seen, though, is that because so many of those workers took things like buyouts or early retirement packages, whatever the case may be.
Which, by the way, sorry to interrupt you again, but they got some pretty good, sweet deals there.
Oh, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm getting at here, Steve. It's the fact that they were given these packages months ago, but because the agreement meant that they were still going to get paid essentially for half a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. As long as those folks are still getting paid, they're still reported as employed
even
by
though they're
the federal
not working.
Government. Exactly. So these surveys will still count them as employed. So the job surveys have been undercounting the rate at which the bureaucrats have been getting let go. So once all of that kicks in, you're going to see those numbers come down, those jobs numbers come down even more substantially. And that has been a drag on the jobs numbers this year. In the same way, Steve, that, as you know, because of the crazy way we calculate GDP, we include government purchases. And so because the government purchases are actually down slightly for the first 6 months of this year, they're not adding to GDP anymore like they had been during the Biden years. That was explosive growth in government, which caused explosive growth in GDP. Even though people were worse off, not better off, GDP still went up. Right, exactly. So now we're seeing the opposite under Trump.
Well, it's a great point. I mean, the average family had no gain in income under Biden. And so far this year, their income is up by about $1,100 in the first 6-7 months of the year. So you're right. The real statistic that matters is how are average families doing. What do you make? You sent me something yesterday, EJ, showing that according to the Federal Reserve Board, the economy is in this, the third quarter grew at, almost 4%, which is very high.
Right. That's the latest estimate from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. They're probably the most well-known of all the different regional Federal Reserve banks who do quarterly estimates for GDP growth. They're not the only one, though, right? St. Louis has a pretty well-known one. So does the New York Fed. But the Atlanta Fed, for whatever reason, is probably the most well-known and closely watched. And you're right, it's 3.9%.
Wow.
And of those 3.9 percentage points, about 2.3 percentage points, so most of it, more than half, is attributed to growth in consumer spending. And what's interesting, though, about the consumer spending numbers, I think, this year, Steve, compared to the previous 4 years, is that now, for the first time in a while, that increase in consumer spending is not coming from the consumer necessarily taking on more debt. It is for some people, but not in the aggregate. Instead, what we're seeing is that a lot of folks are actually seeing their earnings growth outpace inflation for the first time in years. And so they're using that extra real income, what you were just talking about, they're using that extra real income to buy more.
So as I look at the overall economy and I look at what's happening in Washington, as you do, I feel pretty good about things. I'm not a big fan of the tariffs, and I do think the tariffs have contributed a bit to inflation. You look at coffee prices, which are way up, and I think that's certainly attributable to some extent because of the tariffs on coffee beans coming in from Colombia and Mexico. But if you put aside the tariffs and you look at what's happened with tax cuts, with deregulation, gas prices now down to $3 a gallon.
Exactly, Steve. And you're right. Tariffs, at least in the short term, are definitely a headwind. But you have a lot of other things like tax and regulatory policy that are headed in the right direction.
Thanks, EJ. Great analysis. We'll be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Speaking of leading economists, how about if we talk to probably the most influential and famous economist in the world? And I'm not exaggerating here. Our next guest is my great mentor, Arthur B. Laffer, who taught me economics. Arthur, thanks so much for joining.
My pleasure, Steve. I love that music as you come into the show. Wow, I was dancing here.
Well, we worked hard on that.
Going for it.
So, a lot I wanted to cover in just a short time, Arthur, and I know you're off to Europe next week to try to turn around the European economy. God love you for trying to do that.
There you go.
Let us start with a question you get asked all the time, but I think our listeners would love to hear your answer to this. You have worked for two of the great presidents of modern times, Ronald Reagan. You were one of his chief economists. And of course, you're an informal advisor to Donald Trump. You're in the Oval Office with him often. How are they different and how are they the same? Because they've both been so successful on the economy.
Yeah, well, they both have the same set of policies: tax cuts, spending restraints, sound money, minimal regulations, free trade, and peace through strength. I mean, both of them were very much, now their styles were very different, Steve.
Yeah.
But their policies weren't. And it's all policy. I mean, it's all policy. That's all that matters. And they're both really great presidents, two best presidents, I think, in U.S. history.
I'd certainly say in my lifetime, they've been the two greatest. I mean, Clinton was a pretty good president, too, but there's no question that those two, in terms of the economy, have been fantastic. A couple of quick questions. Is Donald Trump a supply sider?
Yes, but he's much more than that. He's also an incentivizer. Right. And, sometimes supply side is what you respond to in the system. And he's good on tax cuts. He's good on spending restraint, work requirements, all of that. He's really good on all of that. But he also knows how to negotiate. And there he's using incentives to get people to behave correctly. And Reagan did that too, by the way. I mean,
yes.
In our area of economics, Steve, he's a supply sider, but everywhere else, he's a phenomenal CEO. And
I
that's
agree.
what I love about Donald Trump.
Yeah, me too. And you and I both in the Oval Office many times with Trump. You much more often than I have.
No,
one of the things that I find striking is, and we've been in the Oval Office together with him, and he's always very curious and always asking you about Reagan, because I think he recognizes what a great President Reagan was, and I think he wants to even be a greater President Reagan.
Yeah, I think he does too. And, it's wonderful that, these presidents have ambitions, and that's what drives them to be so damn good. Is they really want to do a good job, and they want to feel that they are doing a good job, and they want you to recognize that they're doing a good job. I see these stupid people outside now doing no kings and no dictators, and all that. Right. Well, what the hell? Why shouldn't we have someone who knows how to run a ship and knows how to run a government, knows how to do that? You can't be out listening to polls every hour of every day. You've got to sit there and do some stuff. Yeah. And that's what Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan did. They did stuff, and they made it stick, and they had peace through strength, which is as important as economics.
Huge. So one of the things that you've said that kind of surprises people, you've told me this, Arthur, and explain this to our listeners, if you would. You say that Donald Trump believes in free trade.
Yeah, well, he's using tariffs and quotas and non-tariff barriers to negotiate freer trade. We're about the freest trade large country in the world. Mm-hmm. And, he's bringing them to the table to negotiate better deals, just the way he did in his first term. I mean, USMCA was pretty darn good. He had a great deal with Japan and South Korea. He had a good deal with Brazil and Colombia. All of them reduced tariffs, reduced barriers to trade. So I think he's negotiating for free trade everywhere. And he's a negotiator. He does a great. You heard what he did with Malay.
Yes.
When Malay was up, I mean, that's all incentive supply side economics. All of it, just great.
So, if you're a businessman, you have to understand the value of trade and comparative advantage, right?
Of course. And you have to understand the difference between a CEO and a pollster. And a CEO gets stuff done. And that's what Trump does. And, when you put troops into Chicago or you put troops, you disincentivize crime. Yeah. Now, is that a poll? Did you take a poll to do that? Absolutely not. But you put the troops into Memphis and people stop being killed. People stop being murdered and robbed and all that. That's just all he's doing, is just running it like a business. I mean, if your office were being ransacked, you'd get the guards in there to get the guys out. And that's all he's doing.
Yeah. Well, crime is like a tax, right?
Well, it's even worse. It kills you.
Yeah, right.
And it gets those boats coming in off Venezuela. I mean, bam, that's the end of that problem with methamphetamine being snuck in. We got a minute. Incentives are positive and negative, and he knows how to use both.
Amen. So we got a minute and a half left. I'm talking to the great Arthur Laffer, who should have won the Nobel Prize because he is the most influential economist in the world. One last thing, Arthur, in our last 75 seconds here. New York City is some of the political candidates are talking about raising tax rates even more in New York City and in New Jersey. Those two states aren't doing very well. Is this the solution to their problems?
No, it's wrong. And just very quickly, we have a huge historical record of what happens when you raise tax rates on the rich. And three things happen when you raise tax rates on the rich. Number one, the economy underperforms, which is what you're talking about. Yes. Number two, the tax revenues from the rich go down because they leave or they don't report or whatever.
So you're saying you even when the rate goes up, you can actually find the evidence that the revenues go down?
Every single time. And lastly, when you raise tax on the rich, the poor get hammered. I mean, the poor get hammered because they don't have jobs, they don't have places to go, they don't have people to keep it up. So it is not only wrong, it's wrong, and it's immoral and vulgar and should never be tolerated. The rich are our friends. The dream is to make the poor richer, not to make the rich poor. And that's just simple. We're all in this tub together, as Kennedy made it very clear. A rising tide raises all boats.
And tell people what state you live in.
I live in Tennessee, which is the lowest tax state in the nation. Don't tell them which state you live in.
You're right. I live in Maryland. We're one of the highest tax states. Anyway, Arthur Laffer, thank you so much for joining. Please straighten out the Europeans when you're there next week and the Brits because they could sure use your help. This is the More Money Show, and we'll be right back, folks.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope everyone having a fantastic weekend of rest and relaxation for most of us. Thanks for joining in. Our ratings are so fantastic, and it's because people like you tune into the show. So I appreciate it. You make the show a success, and you're the ones who keep us on the air. Well, how cool was that to have Arthur Laffer on for about 10 minutes? And, he doesn't do a lot of these kind of interviews, but he and Larry Kudlow were the best men in my wedding. How cool is that to have Kudlow and Laffer, two of the great economists? So I just love both of those guys dearly, and I listen to them and I learn a lot from them. And some of the information I give to you is through what I've learned from Laffer and Kudlow. And by the way, Steve Forbes, who's a great friend. And I mention that because the four of us are the co-founders of Unleash Prosperity. You can't get a better team. I always say people say we're the supply side Beatles. And I said, yeah, I'm Ringo. I bang on the drums, and Steve Forbes and Art Laffer and Larry Kudlow are the ones who make the beautiful music. But, it was just cool to have him on. I'm going to try to get Arthur to come on more regularly because he's a natural teacher, and he has taught politicians throughout the world, including Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump and so many others. He's off to England. He's going to be talking to Nigel Farage, who could be the next prime minister. And every time I talk to him, he's all over the world. Back by popular demand, I wanted to bring on Jay Johnson. You may recall, if you're a regular listener of this show, that about 3 or 4 weeks ago I had Jay on, and we got such a tremendous response from what he was talking about. It was just eye-opening and jaw-dropping, the information he gave. Now, Jay Johnson is the head of Abacus Global Management, and is an expert on issues related to longevity, and he will show you how he can estimate, your life expectancy, and given your age and your health situation, how you should be investing. It's a cool new dimension of investing. So, Jay, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. Super happy to be back. And I'm glad to be back by popular demand. Most of the time when I talk about things like longevity, lifespan, mortality, no one, I'm standing alone in the corner of the room. Nobody wants to chat with me.
We got such great response because it's fascinating. Well, first of all, let's get into the financial stuff. So tell us about Abacus, what you do and why it's different. There's thousands of financial firms out there. How do you separate yourself from the crowd?
Of course, we're an alternative asset manager, and we use lifespan and longevity data to do two things. One, help seniors better understand what the value of their life insurance policy is in today's market value. And today, that's more meaningful than ever, right? I mean, with all the volatility and uncertainty that we have a lot of people coming to us looking for different types of way to monetize capital, and their life insurance policy is an incredible tool they can use to do that.
So hold on, because this is a really important point you're making, and I want to stress this because a lot of seniors don't even know you can basically monetize your life insurance policy, right?
Right. It changes from a death benefit to a living benefit. Yeah, it's a living benefit asset, right? Just like your home. And we buy out the entire contract from you, take over the future premium payments, and you get that asset value in today's number. Wow. And we then provide you your lifespan data. We'll pay out hundreds of millions of dollars per year all across the United States to people who didn't realize this was the case.
Wow.
The tragedy is that, gosh, 700 billion may lapse this year and no one will know.
Oh my God. You mean, so what does that mean? It will lapse? You mean people won't?
So they just stop making payments and then they never pursue.
And so then their whole insurance, they lose all the money they put into it.
That's right. So, all the premiums, if that were your mortgage, it's like paying a mortgage for 20 years and saying, I'll take nothing for the house.
That makes no sense. Right. So people just are not aware of the fact that they have it's an equity that you have. I mean, it's so funny. I'll tell you, Jay, that I think I may have mentioned this the last time you were on, but my wife just her second job out of college when she was her early 20s, so it was 25 years ago, was working for a technology company, and Larry Ellison at Oracle, and she worked there for 2 years, and then she moved on to other jobs. Well, when she was there, she had a stock ownership plan. So she got equity in the company, and she had completely forgotten about it. And she got a note a few weeks ago from the Oracle saying, by the way, your stock options are now worth $400,000. It was like, we won the lottery or something. So it's sort of the same thing though with these insurance things. People don't realize they're sitting on this money.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And the reaction is always so incredibly positive. And this is now how people are considering their estate plan, right? Because with the estate tax exemption being so much higher, people are looking at going, gosh, I don't need this policy for my estate. Instead, I'll monetize it today because I don't have a tax issue with my estate. And we're seeing our numbers go up dramatically. We're a publicly traded company. We trade under the ticker ABL. And what's also very interesting, we use the data because we aggregate people's lifespan and longevity data to determine how much time is left on that contract, right? And we're now putting that data out to help people better understand how they can be allocating their assets based upon their lifespan, right? Like their number one fear is running out of money in retirement. Wouldn't you like to have a better idea how long you should be planning for in retirement based upon your actual medical facts?
So I am 60.
Yeah.
No, so go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's exactly right. Like you're, in your early 60s and there's a lot of decisions you'll be facing over the next 7 to 10 years. You need every bit of information that you could have. And I still think all this comes towards you're seeing a lot of volatility in the market, right? Yeah. Some people are calling this a crash market. You're an economist. Right. Like I think some of this stuff is oversold.
Everybody's all over the place with their forecasts. Right.
Yeah. It's bananas. Gold at 4,300, there's some panic happening. And what drives some of that is that, you look at a major portion of the economy that drives markets are seniors, right? They're the ones with the largest typically portfolios because they've built it up over their whole lives. And if they're reactionary during that period of time, it's because they're fearful. And that fear is driven by the fact they have stress and anxiety of saying, do I have enough money to make it to the end of my life? And if you have this critical data point, you're going to have less volatility in your portfolio, less volatility in the markets in general. And I just think this is such a huge thing for people to get their head around.
And you're going to make more money. So here's the thing. I mean, let's use Steve Moore as an example. Okay. So I come to you, Jay, and I say, okay, I'm 65 years old. I have 3 sons and 2 stepsons. I bought a lot of life insurance when I was young because I had 3 kids and I wanted to make sure that if I got hit by a truck, they would be taken care of. But now they're out of the nest. They're on their own careers. So, the first thing is I would be stupid to stop paying the insurance premiums, right? Because then I'd lose all the equity that I have. Right. So I should, right? Yeah. And then second of all, so what advice now as I'm going to probably work for hopefully another 10 years, cause I love what I do. But, what advice do you give someone like, they're just sort of entering that retirement phase of their life? What do you tell people like me to do? You would look at my demographic situation. You could tell me based on, all my information, what the best strategy is for me.
That's right. So we would do a full underwriting. We could pull your medical files, look back at your personal history, your family history, genetic history, and we'd be able to say, okay, Steve, you're pretty healthy here with relatives that lived well into their late 80s. So you're looking at a 27 plus year remaining lifespan at this point. Now there could be some medical changes,
time out
about that.
Time out, because this is really a useful. Here's the thing, Jay. Don't the insurance companies already do that? In other words, haven't they already priced that all in?
Sure. But the challenge you have is that it depends on what type of underlying policy you have. You might have a term life insurance policy that expires at age 75. You might have a whole life policy where the premiums are much higher and you're building cash values, or you might have what they call flexible premium or universal life. So depends on the contract you bought. But at some point at 63, you're about to make a decision to get off of, hey, I'm going to buy a term policy and buy something for the rest of my life. And if you're going to do that, the decision you should be thinking about is going, well, okay, how long is that going to be? And then how much of that am I going to allocate to this policy, right? Versus maybe self-insuring or doing some other things. And so that's where that key component comes in. You might decide at age 65, I'm going to get a different type of life insurance policy, one that carries me to age 100. However, guess what? If your lifespan is much shorter than that, we might say, hey, you might want to consider something else.
So some people have more than one insurance plan, right? Because my father took out a life insurance plan for me as kind of when I got married, and then I have my own. So people could have one or two or multiple insurance plans. Can you consolidate all that for people and make it simple?
You certainly can, and I think that's a good route, because sometimes you aggregate things over time. Just like you go into your house, you've lived in your house for 30 years, you've got a lot of stuff. And that happens in your financials, right? If you look across the score, you're going to see, hey, here's my financial plan. I might have multiple policies that were serving different times and periods in my life. Some you may want to let go, put those towards a bigger, better policy that better suits you today. When it comes to your financial planning, you should do the same thing, right? Trim it a little bit. Understand that, hey, how things were when you were in your 30s or 40s are different than in your 50s and 60s. The types of stocks you own, maybe the types of portfolio you own. So that same type of housekeeping you need to do across the board. And it's not just insurance, it's your financial planning. But, I keep coming back to this, is that you can have a material impact on all this at 63, depending on how you're going to advocate for your own lifespan, because all of this matters, right? That's an end date. But what we spoke about last time was super important, which was your health span, right?
Yeah.
Like all this falls apart if in the last 4 years of your life, let's say that, Steve, you got a really good shot living to 90, but you're going to start falling apart at age 86. Your medical bills could be $250,000 to $500,000 a year in the last 4 years.
I've read that people use up half of their wealth just in the last 2 years of their life.
That's exactly what happens, and sometimes it's tragically more.
Well, how do you prevent that from happening?
Your spouse. You have to start making decisions around the biggest impact to your health span are kind of the basics, but it's not that hard. Exercise, improving muscle mass, bone density, right? Like these things have a massive impact. So when I talk about someone's financial plan, it's important they understand, hey, you want to impact those last 4 years. What if you just make it 2 years? You've just saved $2 million potentially. Yeah. Right?
So I'm talking to Jay Johnson. I'm talking to Jay Johnson, who's at Abacus Global Management, is an expert on this. I find it fascinating. We've only got about 20 seconds left, Jay. How do people find out more about Abacus?
Sure. They can go to abacusgm.com. We're an alternative asset manager. We're a financial planning group. We work specifically with people, helping them better understand the net market value of their life insurance policies every day. And the point is, people just need to be aware of what they have.
Well, you help people make more money, and that's what this show is all about. Jay, thanks for coming on, and we'll be right back, folks, on The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope everyone having a fantastic weekend of rest and relaxation for most of us. Thanks for joining in. Our ratings are so fantastic, and it's because people like you tune into the show. So I appreciate it. You make the show a success, and you're the ones who keep us on the air. Well, how cool was that to have Arthur Laffer on for about 10 minutes? And, he doesn't do a lot of these kind of interviews, but he and Larry Kudlow were the best men in my wedding. How cool is that to have Kudlow and Laffer, two of the great economists? So I just love both of those guys dearly, and I listen to them and I learn a lot from them. And some of the information I give to you is through what I've learned from Laffer and Kudlow. And by the way, Steve Forbes, who's a great friend. And I mention that because the four of us are the co-founders of Unleash Prosperity. You can't get a better team. I always say people say we're the supply side Beatles. And I said, yeah, I'm Ringo. I bang on the drums, and Steve Forbes and Art Laffer and Larry Kudlow are the ones who make the beautiful music. But, it was just cool to have him on. I'm going to try to get Arthur to come on more regularly because he's a natural teacher, and he has taught politicians throughout the world, including Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump and so many others. He's off to England. He's going to be talking to Nigel Farage, who could be the next prime minister. And every time I talk to him, he's all over the world. back by popular demand, I wanted to bring on Jay Johnson. You may recall, if you're a regular listener of this show, that about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had Jay on, and we got such a tremendous response from what he was talking about. It was just eye-opening and jaw-dropping, the information he gave. Now, Jay Johnson is the head of Abacus Global Management, and is an expert on issues related to longevity, and he will show you how he can estimate, your life expectancy, and given your age and your health situation, how you should be investing. It's a cool new dimension of investing. So, Jay, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. Super happy to be back. And I'm glad to be back by popular demand. Most of the time when I talk about things like longevity, lifespan, mortality, no one, I'm standing alone in the corner of the room. Nobody wants to chat with me.
We got such great response because it's fascinating. Well, first of all, let's get into the financial stuff. So tell us about Abacus, what you do and why it's different. There's thousands of financial firms out there. How do you separate yourself from the crowd?
Of course, we're an alternative asset manager, and we use lifespan and longevity data to do two things. One, help seniors better understand what the value of their life insurance policy is in today's market value. And today, that's more meaningful than ever, right? I mean, with all the volatility and uncertainty that we have a lot of people coming to us looking for different types of way to monetize capital, and their life insurance policy is an incredible tool they can use to do that.
So hold on, because this is a really important point you're making, and I want to stress this because a lot of seniors don't even know you can basically monetize your life insurance policy, right?
Right. It changes from a death benefit to a living benefit. Yeah, it's a living benefit asset, right? Just like your home. And we buy out the entire contract from you, take over the future premium payments, and you get that asset value in today's number. Wow. And we then provide you your lifespan data. We'll pay out hundreds of millions of dollars per year all across the United States to people who didn't realize this was the case.
Wow.
The tragedy is that, gosh, 700 billion may lapse this year and no one will know.
Oh my God. You mean, so what does that mean? It will lapse? You mean people won't?
So they just stop making payments, and then they never.
And so then their whole insurance, they lose all the money they put into it.
That's right. So all the premiums. If that were your mortgage, it's like paying a mortgage for 20 years and saying, "No, I'll take nothing for the house."
That makes no sense, right? So people just are not aware of the fact that they have it's an equity that you have. I mean, it's so funny. I'll tell you, Jay, that I think I may have mentioned this the last time you were on, but my wife just her second job out of college when she was her early 20s, so it was 25 years ago, was working for a technology company, and Larry Ellison at Oracle, and she worked there for 2 years, and then she moved on to other jobs. Well, when she was there, she had a stock ownership plan. So she got equity in the company, and she had completely forgotten about it. And she got a note a few weeks ago from the Oracle saying, by the way, your stock options are now worth $400,000. And it was like, we won the lottery or something. So it's sort of the same thing though with these insurance things. People don't realize they're sitting on this money.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And the reaction is always so incredibly positive. And this is now how people are considering their estate plan, right? Because with the estate tax exemption being so much higher, people are looking at going, gosh, I don't need this policy for my estate. Instead, I'll monetize it today because I don't have a tax issue with my estate. And we're seeing our numbers go up dramatically. We're a publicly traded company. We trade under the ticker ABL. And what's also very interesting, we use the data because we aggregate people's lifespan and longevity data to determine how much time is left on that contract, right? And we're now putting that data out to help people better understand how they can be allocating their assets based upon their lifespan, right? Like their number one fear is running out of money in retirement. Wouldn't you like to have a better idea how long you should be planning for in retirement based upon your actual medical facts?
So I am 60.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's exactly right. Like you're, in your early 60s and there's a lot of decisions you'll be facing over the next 7 to 10 years. You need every bit of information that you could have. And I still think all this comes towards you're seeing a lot of volatility in the market, right?
Yeah.
some people are calling this a crash market. You're an economist.
Right.
Like, I think some of this stuff
right.
is oversold.
Everybody's all over the place with their forecasts. Right.
Yeah. It's bananas. Gold at 4,300, there's some panic happening. And what drives some of that is that, you look at a major portion of the economy that drives markets are seniors, right? They're the ones with the largest, typically, portfolios because they've built it up over their whole lives. And if they're reactionary during that period of time, it's because they're fearful. And that fear is driven by the fact they have stress and anxiety of saying, do I have enough money to make it to the end of my life? And if you have this critical data point, you're going to have less volatility in your portfolio, less volatility in the markets in general. And I just think this is such a huge thing for people to get their head around.
And you're going to make more money. So here's the thing. I mean, let's use Steve Moore as an example. Okay. So I come to you, Jay, and I say, okay, I'm 65 years old. I have 3 sons and 2 stepsons. I bought a lot of life insurance when I was young because I had 3 kids, and I wanted to make sure that if I got hit by a truck, they would be taken care of. But now they're out of the nest. They're on their own careers. So, the first thing is I would be stupid to stop paying the insurance premiums, right? Because then I'd lose all the equity that I have. Right. So I should, right? Yeah. And then second of all, so what advice now as I'm going to probably work for hopefully another 10 years, cause I love what I do. But, what advice do you give someone like, they're just sort of entering that retirement phase of their life? What do you tell people like me to do? You would look at my demographic situation. You could tell me based on, all my information, what the best strategy is for me.
That's right. So we would do a full underwriting. We could pull your medical files, look back at your personal history, your family history, genetic history, and we'd be able to say, okay, Steve, you're pretty healthy here with relatives that lived well into their late 80s. So you're looking at a 27 plus year remaining lifespan at this point. Now there could be some medical changes,
time out,
about that.
Time out, because this is really a useful. Here's the thing, Jay. Don't the insurance companies already do that? In other words, haven't they already priced that all in?
Sure. But the challenge you have is that it depends on what type of underlying policy you have. You might have a term life insurance policy that expires at age 75. You might have a whole life policy where the premiums are much higher and you're building cash values, or you might have what they call flexible premium or universal life. So depends on the contract you bought. But at some point at 63, you're about to make a decision to get off of, hey, I'm going to buy a term policy and buy something for the rest of my life. And if you're going to do that, the decision you should be thinking about is going, well, okay, how long is that going to be? And then how much of that am I going to allocate to this policy, right? Versus maybe self-insuring or doing some other things. And so that's where that key component comes in. You might decide at age 65, I'm going to get a different type of life insurance policy, one that carries me to age 100. However, guess what? If your lifespan is much shorter than that, we might say, hey, you might want to consider something else.
So, some people have more than one insurance plan, right? Because my father took out a life insurance plan for me as kind of when I got married. And then I have my own. So people could have one or two or multiple insurance plans. Can you consolidate all that for people and make it simple?
You certainly can. And I think that's a good route because sometimes, you aggregate things over time. Just like you go into your house, you've lived in your house for 30 years, you've got a lot of stuff. And that happens in your financials, right? If you look across the score, you're going to see, hey, here's my financial plan. I might have multiple policies that were serving different times and periods in my life. Some you may want to let go, put those towards a better policy that better suits you today. When it comes to your financial planning, you should do the same thing, right? Trim it a little bit. Understand that, hey, how things were when you were in your 30s or 40s are different than in your 50s and 60s. The types of stocks you own, maybe the types of portfolio you own. So that same type of housekeeping you need to do across the board. And it's not just insurance, it's your financial planning. But, I keep coming back to this is that you can have a material impact on all this at 63, depending on how you're going to advocate for your own lifespan, because all of this matters, right? That's an end date. But what we spoke about last time was super important, which was your health span, right?
Yeah.
Like all this falls apart. If in the last 4 years of your life, let's say that, Steve, you got a really good shot living to 90, but you're going to start falling apart at age 86. your medical bills could be $250,000 to $500,000 a year in the last 4 years.
I've read that people use up half of their wealth just in the last 2 years of their life.
That's exactly what happens, and sometimes just tragically more.
Well, how do you prevent that from happening?
Your spouse. You have to start making decisions around the biggest impact to your health span are kind of the basics, but it's not that hard. Exercise, improving muscle mass, bone density, right? Like these things have a massive impact. So when I talk about someone's financial plan, it's important they understand, hey, you want to impact those last 4 years? What if you just make it 2 years? You've just saved $2 million potentially.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm talking to Jay Johnson.
I'm
talking to Jay Johnson, who's at Abacus Global Management, is an expert on this. I find it fascinating. We've only got about 20 seconds left, Jay. How do people find out more about Abacus?
Sure. They can go to abacusgm.com. We're an alternative asset manager. We're a financial planning group. We work specifically with people, helping them better understand the net market value of their life insurance policies every day. And the point is, people just need to be aware of what they have.
Yeah. Well, you help people make more money, and that's what this show is all about. Jay, thanks for coming on, and we'll be right back, folks, on The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the second hour of The More Money Show. Boy, I smile every time I hear that clip from Donald Trump. I love that man. He's been so good to me personally and good for the country most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. I think he's just hitting home runs and doubles and triples. I saw Ohtani had of the Dodgers had what they're now calling the greatest day in the history of baseball last night with 6 innings of shutout baseball, hit 3 home runs, and amazing. But I think Donald Trump was one of those guys who's hitting a lot of home runs with his policies. Thank you, by the way, so much for joining. Thank you to John Catsimatidis for giving me the honor of being in front of this microphone. Every Saturday, we're on from 1 to 3 p.m., and we have listeners all over this great country of ours. In the New York area, where most of you are, it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. Thanks to Kelvin, who's in the booth for us in New York, and Zach, who is in the booth here with me in Washington, D.C., for carving out time in their weekend to make this show possible. I'm angry. I'm a little bit angry right now because the Democrats will not reopen the government because they're trying to score political points, and they're hurting the economy, and they're hurting the American people, and they're hurting our national security to score political points. And I'm sorry, I find that to be irresponsible. Republicans offered an olive branch to the Democrats this week, saying, okay, let's at least reopen our military. We all agree, right? We should fund the military, our great servicemen and our soldiers who defend us and are so critical to our national security, are our heroes. Let's not hold up their paychecks, and some of them are due pay raises. They should get the money that they have earned, and boy, have they earned it by keeping us safe and secure. And no, the Democrats, no, we're going to hold the military hostage so we can make sure that illegal immigrants get access to free health care. Look, I'm very pro-immigration. I think immigrants are great for our country, but we cannot provide free health care for 6 billion people. It's not going to work. I said that earlier on the show. I'm going to say it again. And that's basically what Chucky Schumer is saying. And it makes me so angry to know that flights are being delayed. People are suffering a lot of inconveniences and nuisances because the Democrats will not open the economy because they don't want to save $1.5 trillion out of $80 trillion over the next 10 years. Incidentally, the government goes up in spending every year. I want to be clear on that. We're not talking about cutting government spending. We're talking about cutting the rate of growth of government spending, which is now $7 trillion, and it's headed up to $8 trillion. And oh my God, this is just a crash landing for the economy if we don't do something about this enormous debt and out of control government spending. So I'm here to tell you that the worst outcome of all for the American people, the American economy, and for our children, because we all care about our children. I have 5 kids, three stepsons and 3 sons and 2 stepsons. I love them all. I care about their future. And what kind of a future are they going to have if we're going to hand over to them $50 trillion of debt? It is true insanity, and it is dangerous for our country. And if we could bring government spending and debt down, our economy would grow much faster. It's that simple. Now, I'm very bullish on the U.S. economy right now. I think Trump is pulling all the right levers and pushing almost all the right buttons. I don't like the tariffs too much. Those make me nervous. And Trump gets mad at me when I say that, but I'm trying to just give you the truth. I think the tariffs have had, created some turmoil in these markets. But overall, we got 4% economic growth. We've got inflation. It's not down to where we want it to be, but it is coming down from the, massive increase in prices that we saw under Joe Biden. How about this one? $3 or less a gallon of gas in most areas of the country. I love that story, and it saves a lot of money for American consumers. But we're all nervous. We're all nervous about what's going to happen with prices, what's going to happen. How about housing and healthcare and education costs are out of control. So there's still so much work to be done. Trump, let me tell you this. I've been in many meetings with Donald Trump over the last 10 years in his first term and so far in his second term. I'm always honored to go see him in the Oval Office or the White House or on the campaign trail. And sometimes I disagree with Trump and he gets mad at me. Sometimes he, throws me out of the office because he gets mad at that I disagree with him on things. But even when I've disagreed with Trump on issues, I've always felt that in his heart, he was doing things that he really truly believed would make America great again and would put America first. And for that, I think, he deserves our applause and he deserves the credit for the good things that are going on. How about this? A record high in the stock market. I've always said you want to be in the stock market. Now the gold price is up. We're going to talk a little bit more about this throughout the hour. Why is the gold price up? That makes me nervous. We don't like to see gold prices rise. But the stock market over the last 40 years has grown 5 times faster than the gold price. I'm not bullish on gold right now because it's already so expensive. And the first rule of investing, right, folks? Do not buy high. And if you buy gold right now, I think you're buying high. Now stocks are pretty high too, but when you consider all the policies Trump is putting in place that are putting America first and making America the number one destination for capital, look, I still like the American stock market. I really do. So, good times. We're going to be talking, in a minute to a guy who works for me, Timothy Desher, who is on the scene for the, what do they call that thing? The No Kings March. No Kings March. I don't know exactly what they mean by no kings. I don't think Donald Trump is a king. I think he's a great president. So we're going to hear from Timothy Desher, what's happening there on the mall at the Capitol. A lot of the, traffic has been disrupted by that. So stay tuned. He's got some amazing stories of what's happening firsthand. We've got our Cub reporter there. And we'll be right back to talk with Timothy Desher about the No Kings March.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Having a lot of fun on a Saturday afternoon. I hope you're enjoying the wonderful sunny skies and crisp weather, and I hope you're getting outside. But I hope you're not getting outside and protesting with all these crazy people on the Washington Mall right now, because I don't even know what they're after. Look, Trump is not a king. He is a president who is doing the best he can, in my opinion, and I don't always agree with Trump, to rebuild our economy, make America great again, to bring peace and prosperity. We didn't have much of either of those two things under Joe Biden. And so I've asked my friend and colleague, Timothy Desher, who is the executive director of Unleash Prosperity, if he would mind spending his Saturday afternoon on the mall in Washington, D.C., where there is a big protest going on that is called No Kings. And Timothy Desher, are you there?
Hey, Steve, I am here. I am live. I am in color, and it is.
Do you have camouflage on, or what are you wearing?
They somehow know that I am not a part of this protest. I'm just going to say that.
You mean you don't have a Che Guevara shirt on?
No, and I don't have a sign with some weird saying and some weird painting of Donald Trump. No.
So what are you seeing out there? How many people out there? What have you seen so far?
Well, it started out really kind of tame. I think it was more of just the older crowd that was kind of marching. I have a couple photographs on my Twitter account that you can see. There's about 800 people in this march. And, I was talking to the organizers and they're like, yeah, it's kind of light. We were expecting a lot more. But so as the afternoon kind of kicks on, I think brunch ended and all those millennials that slept in kind of turned out to the protest. And now there's several of them down there near the Capitol.
So, what is the kind of mood? Anger? Are they hate Trump, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's very, very anti-Trump, but right. I think that they've learned their lesson, and they've got a lot of American flags. They're singing songs,
really?
Like "God Bless America" and "This Land Is Our Land." Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, so there's no burning of the flag going on.
Not yet. Now, again, like I said, the millennials and the Gen Z are just kind of turning up now, so we'll see how they
the more
take
radical
the protest.
Yeah. So you said this is a more older crowd right now so far.
Yeah, it definitely is, and look, I mean, they make the cheesy signs, and they have their grandkids with them. It's really kind of an interesting dynamic, Steve. But the interesting thing is they're calling him a king, but I also see that the U.S. Park Police is helping them have their protest. And if you know who controls the U.S. Park Police, that's President Donald Trump. So I don't think a king would support a protest against himself.
Very good point. So there is now. Is this on the? Where is it? Is it by the Washington Monument, or where are you?
No. Okay. So we are currently sort of sandwiched. It's a weird location, Steve. It's kind of on the road that's kind of between the Capitol and the White House, and they're kind of gathering right around the Canadian Embassy, the National Gallery of Art. It's sort of off the mall a little bit, but it's kind of right by the Capitol.
Now, have you been talking to any of these folks?
Yeah, I did. I talked to a few of them, and for all to say, they were very, very anti-Trump, very, very pro-America. And kind of, we want to take America back. So, but the thing is there's no unified message, Steve. Everybody has their own little pet message, anti-ICE, school choice, there's virtually nothing on the economy. It's all negative, Trump and negative, sort of his executive power that he's using. So the interesting thing here is I don't think this protest really does anything because there's no single unified message. It's not like they're marching for civil rights or marching, against Obamacare or something like that. It's just really, it's kind of just a bunch of people that are upset with Donald Trump.
But it's mostly peaceful.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Steve. I asked the National Guardsman. I asked the National Guardsman deployed by Trump to help keep the peace, by the way. And I said, how has it been so far? And he smiled at me and he goes, mostly peaceful, which of course that's a reference to when they were saying that when they were burning down cities a couple years ago, they said they were mostly peaceful protests.
Right.
So I think he got the joke. I got the joke.
And so what is the is there are they is it on the streets or on the mall or where are you physically?
Yeah, so they shut down the street. They shut down
Pennsylvania
Independence
Avenue.
Yep, exactly. Okay. And so that's been shut down, and it's crawling with people, and more are turning up at this point. So
is there any counter protest or any conservatives out there?
There are. It was really, really special. There was a lot of groups that were standing on the street corner, not protesting, but asking if people needed prayer and if they needed help or if they needed water, or they were giving out, things like that. And I think the protesters really appreciated that. But they were wearing pro-Trump T-shirts and, other different signs that they had. So there aren't too many because it is really a beautiful day here. And I think a lot of people just don't really want to be out at a protest. They want to be in their backyard.
Well, Tim, thanks for the on-the-site reporting. Stay safe, my friend, and take off your Trump T-shirt. You might get beaten up. And we'll check in with you a little later. That's Tim Desher. He works with me at Unleash Prosperity. I hope you're getting our Unleash Prosperity hotline, which is free. Go to unleashprosperity.com. Before we take our next break, I wanted to mention a couple of things that are going on that you ought to be aware of. One of them is this issue of whether or not we should investigate whether windmills are killing birds. Now, I don't know how many of you have been following this issue. It's been going on for about 5 years now, but the New York Times is criticizing Trump in its article this weekend for saying that why are we wasting money to find out whether birds are being killed when they fly into windmills and wind turbines. And they're saying this is a waste of money. They're saying it's specious and it's not even true that it's happening. Well, I'm agnostic on this, but I have to tell you this, that we do know, according to I'm going to pull this right up because it's an interesting story. We do know from a group called the American Bird Conservancy that their estimates are that there are about 150,000 wind turbines, and roughly 1 million birds die by flying into these wind turbines. And it's like they're like 500-foot high Cuisinarts, right? And so now 1 million birds is not that many we have well over 1 billion birds in the country. So it's not like the birds are going to go extinct, but for some reason, birds seem to be attracted to these wind turbines. Maybe it's the whirling, and they fly into them and they die. Now, again, 1 million birds out of 1 billion is not a huge number. It's not like they're going to go to extinct. However, what I find very fascinating about this is that, you may recall, folks, that, back in the 80s and 90s, we started, stopping the logging in America, especially out west. Remember the spotted owl? Remember that whole debate about the spotted owl? So we shut down the road building in these forests, and we put thousands and thousands of lumberjacks out of work because we wanted to save the spotted owl. It turns out, by the way, the spotted owl was not really being destroyed by logging. It was happening because there are other birds that were more predominant in that area and were taking over their homes in the trees. And so anyway, I just find it to be fascinating that, the other thing that was going on, by the way, is that a lot of these birds, like the whooping cranes and the California condors and the golden eagles, would get stuck in these oil patches, and they would get stuck there and they would die. And so they would fine these companies millions and millions of dollars if a California condor got stuck in one of these oil pits, or if let's say a whooping crane fell into one of these. And yet they're saying, but if a bird dies from the windmills, we're just going to turn a blind eye to that. And I call that a double standard. And what is this? Apparently they're saying it's much more cruel and unusual for a migrating bird to be trapped in an oil pit than to be chopped to death in a Cuisinart wind turbine. So I'm just saying this because there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here with respect to these wind turbines. Everybody says they're so good for the environment. If they're so good for the environment, what about the birds? Because the birds that are getting chopped up aren't big believers in that. We're going to take a break, and for the last half hour of the show, I have devoted the whole last half hour of this show to taking your calls. And I want to ask you, what do you think of the government shutdown? Do you want the government to be reopened? Do you want the Republicans to cave in? Do you think that Chucky Schumer has a case here? Because I'm angry about it. I think that Chucky Schumer is playing politics with our economy in a very dangerous way. But if you have other things on your mind, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the birds? Should we be concerned about the fact that 1 million birds a year are dying in windmills? I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion on that one. We have other things to discuss. We'll be right back. I hope you're having a great weekend. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is a beautiful Saturday afternoon in most parts of the country, especially in the New York area and Washington, D.C., where I live. So get out and enjoy after the show is over in about 30 minutes, get out and enjoy the wonderful fall weather and the beauty of our natural environment. The colors are just spectacular with the leaves. So I was telling you before the break, I will be taking your calls on this issue of the government shutdown. And who do you think should blink first here? Who do you blame for this? The polls show people are pretty evenly divided. Republican voters blame the Democrats. Democratic voters blame the Republicans. And I shouldn't be too surprised about that. But I'd like to hear your opinion. I'm here to say I think the worst outcome of all would be for Republicans to cave in and say, okay, Chucky Schumer, we'll add another $1.5 trillion to our budget. Come on. Over the next 10 years, we're scheduled to borrow, something like another $20 trillion. We can't keep doing this, folks. This is a cliff that we're going to fall over and crash to the bottom. And it's not going to affect me. I'm 65 years old. Zach, my able assistant, he's about 25 years younger than me. So he's going to have to pay for this, and your kids will. And so we'll be making a big mistake if we cave into the big spenders in Washington, because all they do is spend and spend and borrow and borrow and borrow and print money. That's all Washington is doing these days. Donald Trump, God love him, is trying to stop that. So I want your opinion on this. What's the solution to this budget debt bomb that we're facing that no one seems to want to defuse? I am very nervous about this as an economist. Before I we have one line open, by the way, if you want to join us at 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. I'll say that again, 1-800-848-9222, or an easier way to remember it is 1-800-848 WABC. And I see we have several callers who've already called in, but we've got a couple lines open. So I want to hear your opinion. This is freedom. And by the way, if you disagree with me, I especially want to hear your opinion. This is Freedom of Speech Radio. I like to hear from people. Well, I don't like it when people disagree with me, but it makes the show more interesting when people say, Steve Moore, you're full of it. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just making all this stuff up. I'm not making it up, but everybody is entitled to their own opinion. So before we get to the callers, though, I want to mention a really important story that I mentioned last week, but it's even more important now, which is, why are we dependent on China and Russia for critical minerals in this country? Why? There's no country in the world that has more minerals than the U.S. of A. And if you go to unleashprosperity.com, you can look at our study based on one of the top geologists in the country who is now running the U.S. Geological Survey in the government, which has oversight of all the mining in this country. And he is telling us that the value of our minerals, are you ready for this? $12 trillion in the mountains of Colorado and Montana and the Dakotas and Utah. California has a lot of these resources. We should be mining for our resources in a very environmentally friendly way. It's almost like we have this giant treasure chest right underneath our feet. It's like if you had in your backyard, if somebody said, hey, there's a treasure chest that somebody, 50 years ago buried in your backyard, and all you have to do is, dig 10 feet into the ground and take out this treasure chest and you'll have $1 million. Wouldn't you go out and get it? Well, we have a treasure chest that's worth $12 trillion, not $1 million, $12 trillion. Remember, $1 trillion is $1 million. And think about how much money we could earn from this. We could use the money to reduce our national debt. Think of all the jobs that would be created by the mining. Think about the fact that we no longer have to be dependent on Russia and China. Right now, you all remember, because most of you are of a older age, as I am, that in the 1970s and 1980s, we let OPEC take over the oil market, and they had a gun at our head, a knife at our throat, and they could turn the American economy into a recession by jiggling the price of oil. And they did that several times, and it caused havoc for the economy. Finally, thanks to the shale oil revolution, we started producing our own oil. And what I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it is time that the United States use our mineral resources so that we're not dependent on China and Russia, because they are using it as a weapon against us, just as OPEC did. And we're the stupid ones because we're the ones who will not be doing the mining in this country. We haven't done mining for 30 years. Let's open up those mines. Let's get our resources here at home rather than sending the money to Russia and China, our two greatest enemies. And go to the study. Go see the study. It's clear. By the way, of the 15 most important minerals that we use for our national defense, for our manufacturing, our advanced manufacturing, for our microchips, our technology industries, we need these minerals. We need them. We are dependent on them. And I don't want to be dependent on Beijing. I don't know about you. So let's start mining again. Just like Trump says, drill, baby, drill. How about mine, baby, mine? All right. Whew, I had to get that off my chest. All right. Let us go to the callers, and let me see here. I think you said, Mr. Producer, that we have, is it Michael?
Yes, Mike from Newburgh.
Mike, thanks for calling. What do you got for us?
Hi, I'm curious what your opinion is on Santos being paroled, because not paroled, pardoned, because I knew that when he got thrown in jail.
Hold on. Who are you? I'm sorry. Who are you talking about, sir?
Santos, George Santos.
Okay. Well, I would say that in this case, I have a hard one because he's a disgraced former congressman, and I've been just following this story peripherally. Why is Trump commuting his sentence?
Because they say that because he always voted Republican, but the reason I'm calling is I felt like something like this may happen, and I actually have the dates of when a lot of different commentators said, "Oh, he should go to jail," and now I'm wondering who's going to speak up.
Well, listen, by the way, I appreciate the call. Very, very good. I'm going to look this case up because I'm not altogether familiar with it. But I have to say this. There are hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people in prison who I believe Trump should provide commuted sentences to. I've become, I'm all for getting tough on crime. Violent criminals for sure should be in jail, and we don't want to put people back out of the streets who pose a threat to us. But at the same time, there are thousands of people who have been wilting away in prison who are not violent, many of them drug offenders who were caught with marijuana or cocaine or some of the fentanyl. They were using it. They weren't selling it. We put them in jail and we're destroying their lives. And I have to say, folks, I'm for getting tough on crime when it comes to a rapist or people who commit armed robbery or people who murder. They need to be behind bars. But too many people who do not pose a threat to us, and especially young people, young Hispanics or blacks who might have at the age of 18 or 17, committed a crime, and it's 20 years later, and they're still in prison. And I feel like this isn't we're not rehabilitating people in prison, folks. We are not rehabilitating them. In fact, the fact is we're turning these people into career criminals by spending so much time in prison. So I'd like to see a new system where we try to rehabilitate people and look, everybody did something stupid when they're 17 or 18 years old. I hate it when I see a person's life rotting away in prison when they could be turned into productive adults, and especially if they are sorry for the crimes that they committed. I know people personally in that kind of situation. I also know people in prison who were put in prison simply because they had, I'm not exaggerating, they had Trump signs in their yard. And in these blue states, they went after these people and they found something that they were guilty of and they threw them in jail. So we have to have a more humane prison system. And we've got to keep the criminals off the streets, but the people who really want a second chance in life, I'm for that. And there's a great group called Promising People that is trying to train people in prison so when they get out of prison, they have some skill so they don't have to turn to a life of crime. Let's try to squeeze in one more call. I see my friend Tony has called in. Tony, thanks very much for calling.
Steve Moore, how are you?
Hi.
More money. I'm going to answer your question on the budget. I'm going to tell you on the budget, that budget should be moved forward. Anyone who is not an all-American, meaning just like Eisenhower did, communists should not be allowed to vote on the budget, nor should anyone as
But wait a minute, Tony, if we did that, then the Democrats wouldn't be able to vote. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing, folks. But
so
look,
I left. Listen. I left a message for Senator, one of my senators that does all this stuff.
Well, what state are you in? What state are you in?
I'm in New Jersey. So listen.
Well, you've got two horrible senators. I mean, you can only blame yourselves.
No. The senator from Texas that is involved in all the legal stuff. Cruz.
Ted Cruz. Yes, I like Ted Cruz.
Anyone who is a communist, Marxist, jihadist, un-American should not be allowed to vote. And whoever votes the vote will be based on who's eligible. Eisenhower wouldn't let any communists into the government, Steve Moore, because they're holding up our money, and I think they're going to keep doing it.
We have too many communists. We have too many. You got people running for office in New York City who are openly communist socialist. And communism and socialism, by the way, folks, I want to make sure you know, communism and socialism are exactly the same thing. They're just the opposite side of the same coin. It's just all these isms, communism, socialism, Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, they're all the same. They're all abusing government power to take power away from you and me and give it to the politicians. Great call as always, Tony. We have one or two lines open. Who do you blame for the shutdown and how do we bring it to an end? I want to hear your opinion about that. And also, don't you think we should be mining for our resources rather than being dependent on China? Doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we do something that stupid? All right. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Hope you're having a great weekend.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Love that guy, Donald J. Trump. And boy, did he sell a lot of copies of my book when he made that announcement at a rally a few months ago. Donald Trump, I don't always agree with him on everything. I don't think anybody agrees with him on everything, but he's a good man. And if you're loyal to him, he will fight for you. And I think he's fighting for our country. And sometimes I think he makes the wrong decisions, but I think for the most part, boy, you can't argue with his record. Look at this. We got a record stock market. We got a lot of jobs out there for Americans. And there's a kind of new patriotism in this country that I love. I love this country. 250 years. It's pretty amazing. Okay. So, I want to mention one issue before I get to your calls. By the way, 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. So I hope you'll call in, and we've got, I think, one line open. So, there's still room to get into the conversation. But before I take some of the calls, I want to mention the fact that, I'm going to take a little bow here because at Unleash Prosperity, we led this effort. We just started about 3 weeks ago against this United Nations tax. Now, you're not going to believe this, folks, but the United Nations was going to impose a $150 billion tax on American ships and our cargo ships, our cruise ships, because they were not compliant with this stupid net zero climate change thing. And so whenever a ship went into a port in the Bahamas or in Europe or in London, they would have to pay this giant tax and the money would be turned over to the United Nations. Lord knows what those people would do with it. And I screamed foul. I said, this is crazy. Since when does the United States pay taxes to international organizations? This is taxation without representation. And so we got very involved in the issue. It was going to tax our cruise ships, our cargo ships. 80% of world trade is carried by ships, overseas. And it's like, tens of trillions of dollars of merchandise. So this tax was going to collect all of this money for the UN bureaucrats. And so, I couldn't believe it. We got very involved in it. I wrote a piece in the Washington Examiner and other papers saying this is an outrageous tax, that is being imposed on us by China and the damn Europeans who've they've tied themselves up into knots with this net zero crap. And so they now are going to make us comply with it through this new tax. And, so I raised holy hell about it. And the next thing I know, the Wall Street Journal, where I worked, their editorial page, I called my good friend Paul Gigot, who is the editor of the Wall Street Journal, saying, gotta write something on this. And they looked into it. Excuse me. They wrote a great piece on this called The United Nations Wants to Tax You. It got a tremendous response because everybody reads the Wall Street Journal editorial board page. You should read that, and you should read our hotline every morning. And then the next thing I know, yesterday, this is a great, I called some of my friends at the White House and said, you got to get Trump to weigh in on this so we can stop this United Nations tax. And, sure enough, Donald Trump tweeted out, on his, Truth Social, stop the United Nations tax on America. And, that ended it. We won the fight in the United Nations. It was going to pass 2 weeks ago when I got involved in this issue, and we were able to stop this tax. So I feel vindicated, and I feel like, boy, maybe we made a difference here because thanks to this radio show and Unleash Prosperity and other outlets and the Wall Street Journal editorial page, we stopped it, folks. We stopped this evil tax. Now they're going to come back next year. They're going to try to do this again next year because these people at the UN are relentless in terms of trying. By the way, it was a discriminatory tax against the United States, of course. And how terrible is this? We pay the bulk of the dues to the United Nations, and they use that organization to go after us. So you know what I say? Screw it. We should pull out of the United Nations. I'm serious. Why are we in the United Nations? Name one good thing the United Nations has done. I can't think of anything in the last 20 years the United Nations has done. Trump went over there and got the Middle East peace deal. That wasn't the United Nations. That was Donald Trump. So what do you think? I say we should pull out of the United Nations. Okay. Let us get to our callers. Mr. Producer, I think you said we have Teddy on the line.
Yes, Teddy from Yonkers.
Teddy, you're on, sir.
How you doing, Steve? Steve, I like you as a person. I think you can't compare to Mark Shields. God rest his soul. If he was around, I would love for him to go with you one-on-one. He was a centrist. Just a minute. He was a centrist. He criticized the Democrats many times when he debated David Brooks on Channel 13. And he criticized the Republicans. You say, just a minute, you say you don't like some of the things that Trump does. He's an authoritarian dictator. So add an ism to that one. Authoritarianism, okay? He acts in an authoritarian manner, okay? He uses the Justice Department to get retribution. Now, Santos served 4 months of a...
Okay. All right, Teddy, I'm going to cut you off because you've made your point, and I appreciate your calling in. And I always say this is freedom of speech radio, so I appreciate when people call in different opinions. So let me respond to that. First of all, I do not like when any president, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any president or Obama, use the Justice Department for political ends. And I think all three of those presidents are sometimes guilty of that. So I agree with you, Teddy, on that. I also agree. Mark Shields was a friend of mine. He and I did not agree on a lot of political issues, but I liked him a lot. He was a great guy, and we used to argue about things in a civil way. And why can't we do that in America anymore? Why can't we argue things in a civil way? You have your right of your opinion. I have the right of my opinion. I'm honored because I've got this wonderful microphone in front of me, so I get to reach, hundreds of thousands of people. But, I do not want presidents using the power of the executive office to go after their political enemies. Now, that being said, hold on, Teddy, and I'll give you one last final word on this. But before you get your last word, I want to say this. I am someone who was a victim of this government abuse. When I was nominated to be on the Federal Reserve Board, the IRS went after me. They went after my taxes because of my political views. I was in tax court for years. Finally, the court said, I was right and the IRS was wrong. But this is the kind of power we cannot give to our government. Okay, Teddy, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond because I got a lot of other callers.
I understand. I agree with you. That shouldn't have happened to you when you were nominated. I agree with you. Second thing, dealing with the government shutdown. The president has the power to call a meeting where he attends, where Republicans and Democrats. Why hasn't he done that, Steve?
All right, let's do it.
Done that. He won't do it, Steve.
All right, Teddy, great call. Thank you for calling in. And you know what? I agree with you. I think that's exactly what Donald Trump should do to bring this thing to an end. Great call. I don't always agree with you, but I love it when people call and disagree with me. That's why my wife is calling in. Okay, who do we have next, Mr. Producer?
We have Steve in New Jersey.
Steve in New Jersey. You're on, sir.
Hey, Steve. The Republicans should not cave on the shutdown, provided they use it as a point to make 4 points. Ready? Mm-hmm. Now, the Dems caused the shutdown because they wanted to, the Republicans were willing to give them a continuing resolution, keep spending at the same levels. The Democrats want more spending of money we don't have.
Yes.
That's point number one. All right. Yes. Point number two. Use it to fire these non-essential workers and say, look, we don't need them. We're running over budget as it is. A lot of these people Doge uncovered were just either sitting home, not working, or working other jobs.
Yes.
And the taxpayer don't.
Yes.
Third point they should make, all right? We should not be giving Medicaid to illegals and people who are capable of getting up off their rear ends and going to work. Last point, Steve. Get a discussion going again. You know, you keep hearing about the subsidies, and it's going to cause everybody's health insurance premium to go up. Why is that, Steve? Obamacare. Get a discussion going. We need to repeal it. That's because of Obamacare.
Yes.
Get that discussion going. So as long as the Republicans keep the discussion going, and this is what they're fighting about, meaning the Democrats, I say keep it going. What do you say, Steve? Go ahead.
Amen. I mean, I couldn't say it better. I agree with all of your points, sir. I think you're exactly right. I always say, Steve, that I'm not the smartest radio talk show host, but I have the smartest listeners, and it's people like you call in with great points, and I'm going to give you an A on that response. Okay, thank you, Steve, for calling in. Who is next, Mr. Producer?
We have Joe from Connecticut.
Okay, you're on.
Hello, Steve.
Hi.
I've been teaching chemistry, biology for 50 years, college professor of chemistry.
Wow, thank you. Hold on. What do you teach? What do you teach? High school or grade school or what?
No, I teach college. I'm a college professor now. I used to teach high school many years ago. I taught in the Bronx. I'm in Connecticut. But anyway, I spoke with you November 16th about getting rid of the education department. I don't know if you remember. But now the rare earth elements, these are the lanthonite series. If you remember the periodic table there at the bottom, these are elements. There's 17 of them. And now let me read you something. In 2010, China began to restrict the export. They started to control it. They took over the mine that was in Nevada under Henry Reed, Mountain Pass. They took that over. Now, the problem is they're all over the earth. And in fact, in 2013, when China sent a land rover to the moon, they were looking for rare earth elements. They wanted to control it everywhere. This is a fact. You can check it out. I want to read something else if you want. On December 2011, this is under Obama, he was president, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce announced that in order to protect international demand and maintain the basic stability of rare earth supplies, the total export would be controlled basically the same. So they restricted it going back almost 15 years. So this has been going on a long time. We need those rare earth elements. They're not rare. They are elements. They start from scandium all the way down to lutetium.
All right. Hold on. Time out. Okay. Cause you're clearly an expert on this. You've been teaching about this for many years. What, don't you agree with me that we should be mining for our own resources?
Absolutely. They're all over they're all over the earth, but they have to be processed. And the processing of it was that manufacturing process was taken over by the Chinese when under Obama administration was sent over. They bought the company that basically does that. In fact, these elements come as compounds. They're in minerals.
I know.
They have to be separated. And it's a chemical process, very complex and very complicated.
But we can do it here in America, can we not?
All over the earth.
Well, but we can do it here.
We developed that technology to do it.
Yes,
that company, I forget the name of it right now. It was bought by the CCP. I hate to use Chinese. I'm going to use CCP all the time. They bought it. They bought that technology, just like they bought all the pork farms. They control all the pork, for example. I'm going
to cut you off because I've got two more callers, but it's a great point. I appreciate when smart people call in and know more about this than I do. But I'm just here to tell you, folks, we should be mining these resources. We should be putting them in the market. because we do not want to be dependent on China and Russia. By the way, Russia has a lot of these minerals too. How stupid is this that we're hostage to these countries, just like the U.S. budget is hostage to Chucky Schumer right now? Do we have time for one more caller, Mr. Producer?
Yes, sir. We got Andy from New Jersey.
Andy, thanks for calling in.
Steve, why aren't we publishing statistics from DOGE on a monthly basis the way we publish other economic statistics? The results of DOGE is going to carry the midterm and 28. It's very important. We should get these stats the same way as we get any other economic stats.
That's a great idea. They should do that. I think they just put out a report a few weeks ago on what they have achieved so far, but I would like to see monthly updates. I think it is an excellent point you're making, sir, and I want to tell you folks, I'm a big believer in DOGE. I was one of the people who recommended to Donald Trump that we have a waste commission, and that's exactly what DOGE is doing, and this is why the liberals in Washington are so angry. They do not want to cut the waste. They do not want to cut the fat. They don't want to find the inefficiencies and the redundancies in government. And I got to tell you, as someone who has been in the swamp for 40 years, and I don't say that to boast, but the fact is, you go into these government agencies, folks, and corridors of people, nobody even knows what they're doing. I don't even think they know what their job is. I think a lot of the administrators have forgotten these people are there. They're collecting a government paycheck. We can cut 20 to 25% of the bureaucracy, more than Trump has already done. When you're looking at the Medicaid program, $152 billion of fraudulent payments. Let me say that again. not 152 million. Did you think I said 152 million? $152 billion. Not over the course of the lifetime of the program. In 1 year. Medicare, same thing. The food stamp program is being ripped off. Why shouldn't people who are able-bodied, who are 24 years old playing computer games and watching TV, get off their butts and get a job? Their jobs are out there for people who want to work. Why is it that we're I'm for immigration. They have to come in the right way, and they should not be eligible for government welfare programs. Most immigrants come in this country because they want jobs and they want freedom and they want to rise the economic ladder of success. So, I'm sorry. I think that DOGE has got to continue. I know that Elon Musk was made out as if he's some kind of villain. No, he's not a villain. He's a hero for what he has done to help save taxpayer money, but I want another zero on that. I don't want 25 billion of savings. I want $250 billion of savings or more. And that's cutting out the fat in the budget and the redundancy and the inefficiency and the waste and the fraud. It is everywhere in Washington. I got to tell you this. All right. I've just got a few minutes left for the show. And I wanted to mention a statistic that I mentioned in passing last week, but is so important that I want to make sure that all of my listeners, especially in the New York metropolitan area, and that includes people in Connecticut and New Jersey, pay close attention to this. We have a new study that we just put out that looks at, over the last 10 years, how much money came into various states and how much money left in various states. And by the way, we have a new billboard ad campaign that's going to start next week in New Jersey and New York, because those are the two states that are losing the most people and the most money. So if you look at New York State over the last 10 years has lost $517.5 billion of income that should be spent and earned in New York, and has now gone to states like Texas. It's gone to Florida. It's gone to Utah. It's gone to Idaho. It's gone to the Carolinas. Every one of you knows somebody who has left New York. You probably know loads of people who are, packing their moving vans, and they're leaving. And they are leaving New York, and they are impoverishing the state. And why are they leaving? A lot of reasons. They're leaving for crime. They're leaving because of bad schools. They're leaving mostly because the taxes are so high in New York. And so you've lost $500 billion in just 10 years. That's incredible. A lot of it is going into Florida. New Jersey, same situation. The number is almost $200 billion that has left the state. How can you tax rich people if they don't live in the state anymore? How hard is this for people to understand? If you raise their taxes, they will leave. Famous story I've said many times on this show of Ken Griffin, who was a billionaire, had thriving business, financial business in Chicago. Finally, they kept raising his taxes, finally said, I'm out of here. And he left, and he was a billionaire, and they put a $50 million hole in the New York budget. You can't tax somebody, folks, if they're not there. They're now in New York. They're all going to, the Carolinas or Florida or Texas or Tennessee that have no income tax. So what sense does it make for New York to raise its taxes? These are incredible statistics. You are losing in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey your greatest resource. And your greatest resource is your people and your children. As soon as they get the college degree, they're getting the hell out of there. They're moving to these other states, and it is a tragedy to see. And if we continue to see tax increases in New York City, as some people want to put in place, soak the rich. All we have to do is tax rich people. They won't be there any longer. They're going to pack their U-Hauls. They're going to pack their businesses. They're going to take their money in their banking accounts, and they're going to go somewhere else. I mentioned this last week, and I'm going to say it again. Texas, just 2 weeks ago, has opened up the Texas Stock Exchange. Just like New York 150 years ago set up the New York Stock Exchange. And what is going to happen if New York keeps talking about taxing the rich, soak the rich, the evil rich people, the millionaires and billionaires won't be there any longer. And then who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to pay for the shelters? Who's going to pay for the healthcare programs? Who's going to pay for the schools? Who's going to pay for all this? Come on, folks. Get with the program. You cannot tax your way to prosperity. And the best examples of that are Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. I know we have a lot of listeners in Rhode Island, Maine. It doesn't work. Look at California, by the way. California has also lost $200 billion over the last 5 years. You're losing your best resources because you're trying to tax people. If you had school choice, if you had lower taxes, if you got rid of your income tax, if you had reasonable property taxes, if you solved the crime problem, you would bring people back. I do not want to see New York City fall into the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, which it will do if you continue, and not because of climate change, but because you are taxing the people who create the wealth, create the businesses. Treat the people who create the businesses kindly, and you'll get more businesses. What's the old saying? You attract things with honey, not vinegar. And so all of this talk about soak the rich, just soak the billionaires. How are you going to soak the billionaires if they're living in Miami? How are you going to soak the millionaires and billionaires if they're living in Tampa? What about if they go to Dallas? I mean, Dallas has no more financial workers today than New York does. I want New York to be great again, but you're not going to do it by raising taxes. That's my message for the weekend. Have a great one, folks. It's a privilege, a pleasure to be with you. We'll be back next week. Same bad time, same bad channel on the More Money Show on WABC.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.